Well, everything's gotten super expensive, so I'm gonna show you how I do my oil change because I don't take mine to the shop. I took it to the shop once when I got the car. It's $180, I think, when I originally got this car to change the oil because it's considered a luxury vehicle. It uses more oil than a regular car. So when I do my oil change, once I get oil only, and then the second time I do oil and a filter. And when I get oil only, the oil costs me $70 because I get the box. So it has 12 quarts. The car holds 8. And then when I change the oil the next time after that, I usually get a bottle of oil and an oil filter, which costs me about $45. And I have enough oil left over from the last oil change to make up the difference. It holds 8 quarts. First box, I have 4 left over. So then when I do the next oil change, I usually have 1 quart left. Top it up. But anyway, quick stuff that you don't make mistakes, because common conception when you do your oil is if your car is old, if you have a truck, you use a certain type of oil. Actually, right here on this is where your oil actually goes into the car. That actually right there, SAE 0W20 is your type of oil and your oil weight. That's what you should be using. I use Mobile One. That one is the oil bottle from the excess oil from the box. They don't keep the box generally. You're gonna look here, make sure you get the right type of oil, and then you could either look in your owner's manual. It will tell you exactly how much oil your car actually holds, or you can just Google it. My owner's manual is on my phone, so it says it holds 8 quarts of oil. These jugs are 5. Cars usually hold 5 or less. Trucks usually hold 5 or more. This is technically a truck, so it holds 8. So all you're gonna actually need is your oil funnel to pour the oil in without getting the mess. This black thing on the ground that looks really messy is actually where the oil goes, the old oil, hence the reason it's messy. This is an oil filter wrench. This is the oil filter, and this is an oil plug. Oil plug you don't actually need every time you do the oil, but considering over the past a few months, it seems as though I've had an oil leak, and as you see, there's no actual oil in my engine bay. That means, more than likely, my oil plug is damaged, and I'll show you where it's actually damaged. As you see on the oil plug, it has this little black ring here. That's the seal, and then has the plug itself. Over time, this seal actually goes bad. I've had it go bad in my Mustang, my Neon. It's all went bad. It's not a big deal. This is $6. It's actually not a big deal to buy a new one. And they also usually change the bolt from what it comes with originally, because it usually comes with a 10, which makes it a little bit easier to do, because the bolts on them originally are all different sizes. I don't know why, but that's just how they do it. Anyway, I'm changing this because I see a small leak. Usually by the time I have to change my oil, I have low engine oil, which shouldn't happen. Your engine oil shouldn't be getting low. That means you have a leak somewhere. Before you do anything else, I recommend just going to the auto parts shop and picking one of these up. So the next time you do your oil change, just replace this and see if that works. Trust me, that's usually your best bet to start with. I spent $200 getting all kinds of stuff for my Neon. I even went and changed out some of the head and the gaskets inside of this part of the engine in the Neon. It's a lot smaller, easier to do, and the oil leak was still there. And then I took this off and changed the bolt on because the bolt head was rounded. See how this is square? It had started to come off because the shop used a high torque power tool, which you're not supposed to use, and they damaged the bolt. So I changed the bolt and oil leak stopped. So if you have a slow oil leak, like it has to be really slow, I recommend checking this first, especially if you have oil on your driveway. Change this out and then move on to diagnose other stuff, because it's more than likely this thing, because this is just one little seal, and this actually gets taken off and put on every time you change the oil, and that seal gets very easy to damage, especially if dirt gets on here. It will damage that seal. On to the next stuff. Okay, before you start jacking up the car, make sure there's something under the tire, brick or a piece of wood under both rear tires, because when you're doing the oil, it's gonna jack up from the front. Doesn't really matter what it is, as long as it's not smooth or easy to run over. What this is gonna do is cause the car to not roll backwards when you start jacking up, because even with your handbrake down, the car still has about 3 or 4 inches of play once you start jacking it up. So once you start jacking up, it'll roll by 3 or 4 inches. which can cause it to fall off the jack. We are going to start with the driver's side because more often than not, your oil plug is on the driver's side. So you're gonna start with the driver's side, jack it up, and put a jack stand under it. Always remember your jack stand. You don't want the car dropping on you. At this point, you're gonna jack your car from this piece right here to the frame of the car, and then you're gonna put your jack stand under it. But quick tip, jack the car up as high as it'll go with your jack. So remember, because you're going under the car, always make sure the jack stand is sturdy and slowly lower the jack so that it can be firmly on the jack stand. You can actually take the jack out. You can actually jack up both sides of the car if you want. I usually do that. You're gonna want to take out the oil cap also now. I recommend doing it before you actually jack the car up, because considering that the size of my car, with the car jacked up, it's almost at like, it's actually at my chest height now, so it's gonna be a little bit hard to reach it. You take this off so that there's air coming out when you unscrew the bottom so that the oil flows out and doesn't drip out, and takes all day. And now it's time for the actual work. So this is the bottom of the oil filter, and that's the oil filter bolt. Generally your bolt is not facing that way, it's not facing out, it's usually facing down so the oil can drain straight down. But this car, this year, they face that. So what I usually do is I get a funnel and I put it here, and it'll stay here by itself so that when the oil starts draining, it goes into the funnel and then down into my oil drain pan, which is here. But what you're gonna want to do is you want to make sure these are taken out, and I have my bolt ready to go back in. So now I'm gonna pull this bolt out and let the oil drain. Once it's almost done draining, I'm gonna unscrew this with the oil filter wrench and put my new filter in, and then I'll bolt the new oil drain pan on also. See, and now the oil is draining out. It's draining right into oil pan. So the oil filter actually is pretty easy to come off. You use the oil filter wrench and you squeeze it and take it off. You can be very rough with it when you're taking it off, but not when you're putting it on. You don't want to damage this part. But when you're taking it off, usually I just squeeze as hard as I can so I can grip it and then turn it, because it usually gets pretty hard to take off after it's been on for like a month. Now for some tape. Tip number 1, do this when your car is cold, or at least not after you've driven it. Oil is hot. Oil acts as a sort of coolant. Well, in a sense, the oil circulates in the car and keeps the engine the same temperature, while the coolant on that side, that's the coolant over there, goes into radiator and cools down the engine. But the oil flows through the engine to lubricate the entire engine and make sure the heat is transferred evenly across the engine. So oil is generally pretty hot. Don't do it when your car is hot. You will burn yourself. You will get some oil on you. Regardless of how careful you are, you just will, because that's just how that works. Tip number 2, you don't need to put all kinds of oil additives in your car. Make sure you just follow this thing and it'll tell you exactly what you need. See that little sign? That means in your manual, the rest of the information is there. You don't have to put a lot of oil additives in your car or anything like that. I actually don't. I put it in there once in a while. I think I put oil additives in the car 40,000 miles ago. Why? Because it increases your oil weight, so it makes it thicker and the car handles a little bit less responsive. It also burns more gas when you use heavier weight than is recommended. So stick to the correct oil weight and do your oil change on time, and your car should run a little bit longer. If you notice your car is still leaking oil, take it to someone, have them check it out, make sure there's nothing wrong. But usually if you're doing the oil change on time, regular, on time, every time, you shouldn't run into a problem with your seals or anything like that. Even when your car is old, this car has over 200,000 miles on it, no leaking oil seals, no leaking anything, just that one thing that was leaking, and I'll show you why it was leaking. This is the oil drain plug, and you notice the difference. It looks a little bit different, but the biggest difference is this ring. As you can tell, the ring is pretty much flat with the surface of the metal, so they actually doesn't provide very much of a seal anymore, so which is why the oil will leak out around this ring right here. So usually if you have oil leak, changing this will pretty much help it. The bolt is a different shape, but it doesn't really matter as long as this part fits right here and it has a ring around it to seal it, the gasket to seal it in properly, it won't leak. And when you go to auto parts store, they'll give you the right one, because there generally aren't that many different sizes for these. They just come in basically different lengths. Also, you want to give it like 10 minutes to drain properly. They don't do this in the mechanic shop because they usually get an air tool and they put it right there on this yellow thing. This yellow one right here is actually where you check your oil. They put air on here and they just blow air through it to push any remaining oil out of the canister in a few seconds. But seeing that I'm not going to do that because that's usually messy, I just let it drain for 10 minutes. Now it's time to put this in, which is the oil filter and the drain plug, and then after that all you do is put the oil back in. So we're actually almost done. This is the easy part. What you want to do before is you get a little cap with oil in it, you pour it on top of the oil filter, take your finger, dip it in oil and rub it around this rubber part right here. This rubber part is the seal. You want to make sure this has a little bit of oil on it, so it's lubricated, so when it touches the inside of the thing, it doesn't dry out. Because it has oil on it to begin with, it's not going to dry out from touching that part. Another tip before you put in the oil filter is this part right here, is to make sure this circle is clean. That's where the ring on the oil filter goes, the part that you just oiled, that's where that goes. Make sure that's clean, because if there's dirt there, it will leak around there also. And make sure the oil seal from the old oil filter is not there. And see, the new oil plug is actually already there. I have to bolt it in. Most of it can be screwed in by hand. The oil filter is going to be screwed in almost entirely by hand, and then you get your oil filter wrench and do like a half a turn, just enough so it's tight. But my oil change is almost done. I just have to put oil in, but this is going at the beginning of the video because it's probably the most important part of changing your oil. This catch can where the oil goes is to keep your oil from getting on the floor and going on the grass, because it is very illegal to dump oil on the ground. Do not throw your oil away. Take this to an auto parts store. They will take it for free. They will dump it out. I usually pour my oil back into these bottles, and then I just drop the bottles off at AutoZone. They take it for free and they dump it in their containers, which they get sent to be recycled. Do not throw this away in your garbage or anything else, including your oil filter. Don't throw that away either. That is also illegal. This is why I have this right here. An oil filter with one of these scrunchy things that let you bend the oil filter, because my thing is here, and if I try to pour the oil in here, it usually gets everywhere. So I put it in the oil filter, the funnel, and then I can put it in the funnel and move the funnel so it's level and it's easier to pour. It's okay for the old oil to be there because there's still old oil in the car, because not all of it will drain ever, but that's just a little bit. It's not even a full quart. So you're gonna put it here. You're gonna make sure you fill it up here, and one at a time. I'll show you that now. Yeah, I forgot I have my gimbal with me, and I could have been using this the whole time to shoot this video, but you know what, whatever. Get your oil funnel in the hole. Make sure your oil filter is propped up someplace so that you can actually pour the oil in without getting it everywhere, because if you do, it will smell like your car is on fire and burning. The oil is not too much of a different color from the old oil that came out. It's just a little bit darker. The old oil is darker because it has dirt from your engine in it. My car uses 8 quarts, so we're gonna put this entire bottle in. It's a whole bottle because it's just 5 quarts in here, and then my other one has 4 quarts left in it. So I'll make sure I put 3 quarts in and leave just 1 quart behind. And my oil change will be complete. Oh yeah, I forgot. You can pull this out also. This yellow thing back here is what you use to check your oil level. It will add some air vent so that you can pour your oil a little bit faster. Not much faster, but just a little bit. And once you finish pouring your oil, that is it. You have nothing else left to do but put this cap back in place, and your oil fill change is finished. Took me about a half an hour, and good thing too, because it's about to rain. I actually feel it starting to come down now. I'm not sponsored by Mobil 1, even though I wish I was, but I use their oil because because the fuel economy thing does work. Actually, I get like 3 miles per gallon, 3 mpg more, which in a week, considering I use 10 gallons a day, turned that out to a week, it actually pays the extra cost of the oil change already. I usually save about $10 a week on gas. Doesn't seem like much, but $10 a week, and I usually change the oil every 3 months, it pays for the oil change by itself just on the gas I save. Also, as you notice, this oil, what I'm pouring in now, is a little bit lighter colored than I was before with the brand new bottle, because this is actually the, I think this one in here right now is Valvoline that I had left over. It's okay to mix oil types. I mean, it's okay to mix all brands, just not all types, because then you get the heavier weight anyway. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm gonna finish filling it up because it's not raining and I need to close my hood down and put my electronics inside.